Hello, and welcome to EmpowerID 101. My name is Phil Geringer, one of the solution architects here at EmpowerID. I've created this series of short training videos to provide you with an administrator's understanding of EmpowerID. I have included videos that cover most aspects of EmpowerID, from basic concepts to complex configurations and everything in between. Each video has been designed to cover a specific topic or process, so feel free to come back often and refresh your understanding of a particular area that you're interested in.
For this video, we're going to be taking a look at the role and location design considerations for a manufacturing company. So let's take a look at our company. It's a manufacturer with its own chain of outlet stores. They have a logistics operation that does just-in-time distribution of goods from their manufacturing facilities to the distribution centers in strategic national locations. Now the margins are pretty thin. They depend on their technology systems to provide the edge over their competition. Now their Active Directory is structured around the role of the staff member with a separate OU for contractors. Now current group policies are applied to these OUs. The company operates in a highly distributed and siloed environment where intellectual property is highly prized and sensitive, and where process owners, data owners, and reporting managers retain approval over activities, but the processing occurs in a centralized IT department. Now, because of this, a lot of time and effort is wasted processing manual approvals with paperwork, and the auditing is quite cumbersome. Now, as we did in the previous video, we're going to take a look at our common questions that we're going to ask ourselves so that we can make some appropriate design decisions. So number one is, will the system be used by non-technical, business-oriented employees or only by centralized technical IT staff? We want to look at the structure of the target back-end resource systems that we're going to need to automatically provision to or provide access to. And then we need to take into account what entitlements, such as accounts, mailboxes, home folders, and such, will need to be automatically provisioned. And then look at any other access assignments that will need to be provisioned in the system through automated processes. So let's start taking these one at a time. First of all, are we dealing with technical or non-technical users? Well, now the system processes will need to be extensively delegated to a wide number of non-technical users to provide for owner-based approval of changes to systems. That's what they told us in our discovery. So we're going to need to have a business-oriented structure that non-technical managers can understand and be able to easily navigate. Now, most delegations will occur at an application, project, and group level. And automated assignments are more a function of the job role that someone has, as opposed to the location or department that they work in. Now, any assignments based on organization are at a high level, such as departments, store, or warehouse. And this is kind of illustrated in their Active Directory that is more role-based, and we'll see that in just a moment. Now, much of the initial delegation will occur based on the reporting relationships between the staff and their direct line managers. And so what we're seeing from this information so far is that the assignment and delegation structure will need to be less organizational and more role, process, and reporting relationship based. And it is going to have to be structured at a business in a business orientation so that the non-technical staff can use the system effectively. All right, so managed system architecture considerations. Now this is our Active Directory, and it's quite flat in its design, with the OU structure being based on the roles and account types of the staff. Now, group policies have all been applied at the OU level, governing the environment that a particular type of user can operate in. They have, workstation-based policies, desktop policies, application policies, and such, based on the type of employee that you are. And now there are no reference links between the OU structure and the organizational location structure of the business. So our Active Directory really has no reference to like the departmental or geography of the company. So from this, with no reference to the organizational structure, we'll not be able to configure any automated mappings between the OUs and the location structure in EmpowerID. So everything's going to have to be done at a definition manually assigned level. So let's take a look at our entitlement provisioning considerations. So we know that Active Directory accounts will be provisioned based on the roles of the staff. Resource entitlements configurations will be primarily based on the inheritance structure of that role tree that we set up. Exchange mailboxes will be evenly distributed across all mailbox stores regardless of the configuration of the user. That's just how the customer has their mailbox stores set up. Now, home folders are provisioned to a DFS system targeting specific parent shared folder. So it's relatively straightforward. And now, provisioning connectors to some of their other critical business applications are going to need to be created, so we'll need to provision resource entitlements for these applications. Now, application access will be determined based on assignment by line managers and approved by the application owners. So they have very few just default applications that someone gets. It's a highly siloed environment, so the line manager of an individual staff member has to request that a person have access to particular applications. And that's one of the things right now in their manual processing environment where the IT staff's doing all the provisioning, where it just adds a lot of bottlenecks to the process because the line manager has to request it, an application owner has to approve it, and then it finally goes over to the IT staff to get provisioned. So the conclusion from what we know here is that the resource entitlement provisioning will need to be configured based on role inheritance and manager assignments to management roles, and mappings will not be a factor. So let's take a look at some of our other assignment considerations for this particular company. What we found out is most group memberships will be based on the combination of a specific role in a specific location, so well-defined and granular roles with basic location structure will need to be defined. Now, there are a lot of group memberships. Now, these are all assigned by line managers and then approved by data and group owners primarily. A lot of these are going to be ad hoc requestable type group memberships. Now, application access is assigned by two separate determiners. In some instances, the job role that someone has will determine what applications they get assigned to them, and then other ones are simply requested by a project manager or some other line manager. Speaking of project managers, the customer has a very strong project management organization that manages many long-running and sensitive projects. Now, project managers for these projects have a lot of authority with regard to their projects, a lot of autonomy in their projects, and they will need to be able to assign group memberships, web application access, SharePoint site access to individuals that participate in their projects. And then contractors are used extensively for basically any and all functional job areas across the organization. Now, contractors, however, are not allowed to have access to sensitive employee-based websites and file shares. So we'll need to take that into account as we look at how we configure our roles and locations here and how we look at designing our assignments. What do these assignments mean for our role and location structure? You see, many of these access assignments are based on a job role. So the role structure we know is going to need to be extensive so that the assignments can be made to as many roles as is reasonable. We don't want to go too nuts on too many roles, but we want to try to capture as many architectural role setups as we can so that we can do a lot of assignments automatically without having to have requestable for everything. Now, certain base level groups that are determined by the staff type of either employee or contractor will need to be assigned, but these staff types are indistinguishable in the roles that they have. Now, we'll want to probably create dynamic hierarchy policies to group contractors and employees into separate management roles, and then assign these base level access assignments at this particular anchor point, whether they're in a management role for employees or a management role for contractors. And we'll not need to break out the role structure by employee roles and contractor roles. We'll just have a basic role structure, and then we'll do our employee and contractor specific assignments based on dynamic hierarchy policies. Now, project managers are assigned to their various projects and need to have wide-ranging authority within their projects to manage groups, applications, management roles, websites, and people. So if we set up locations for each of these long-running projects, then we can take all of those different objects, such as groups, applications, management roles, websites, people that are associated with the projects, and we can assign all of those different objects to a particular location and then delegate the project manager to have management rights against all of the objects associated with that particular project. So some general considerations. Number one, job roles are very important to this customer and to their technology assignments, so most assignments will have some sort of job function component. Person reporting relationships are also very important for access approvals, and relative assignments will be used for some of the RBAC delegations instead of organizational structures. Now, since the location and department assignments do not play a very large role in the entitlements and assignments, we need to kind of keep these relatively high level. So we should only create a location structure down to the level that needs to be used for our assignment purposes. And then resource entitlements will also be more complex for this customer and will be set up directly assigned to the OU in the definition instead of using the mappings like we did for Company 1. Employee versus contractor assignments will need to be handled through dynamic hierarchy assignments from an attribute on the account record. And then finally, locations representing projects will be used to aggregate the objects that a project manager will need to manage assignments for. All right, so let's go over to our server and take a look at how we're going to end up configuring this particular company in our role and location assignments. So once again, we're back here to our role and location manager where we can see our roles, our role tree, and our locations tree in a nice single view here. So we'll come over here. I've got our company 2. Now, let's take a look at the Active Directory associated with this company as well. So here's our company 2 Active Directory, and you'll notice that everything that they do as far as their Active Directory OUs are concerned are based on the job role. So we've got information technology roles, anyone who's a manager, anyone who's a retail staff, warehouse workers, administrative staff, contractors, drivers, etc. So all of these are basically role-based. So when it comes to setting up our structure on the location side, we're not going to have any considerations as far as what what Active Directory OU it needs to go to, etc. But in our discussions and in the information gathering we did, we do know that there are certain basic breakdowns and basic structures that are important to some of our assignments. So for instance, we have a number of warehouses that they actually work in. And so we can break out those warehouses so that we can have a warehouse worker, a pick-pack person, something like that, assigned at a particular warehouse. Okay, so they'll have distribution lists and some other things assigned based on the warehouse that someone's in, but then they'll also have a lot of other assignments based on the role. So we'll break out warehouses. Now, since it's also got a retail component to this particular organization, the store that someone's in, if it's a retail associate, is important. So we can break out the retail into stores. Now, I've got these higher level structures here so that I can make assignments if necessary at, say, a warehouse level. So all warehouse employees, no matter which warehouse they're in, may need to have certain distribution lists associated with them or get access to certain servers or certain applications. So we can assign that at a warehouses level instead of having to make all the assignments at all the various warehouses, retail as well. Then we also have headquarters, which is broken out into a high level of departments, with the exception of logistics, which does need to be able to track drivers based on the hub that they run out of. So we've got Atlanta, Dallas, San Francisco, the basic transportation hubs where they dispatch their drivers from. All right, these are our locations, relatively straightforward for this particular organization. So now let's take a look at our role structure that we need to operate for this particular company. Now the role structure, since it ties to the Active Directory, we're going to want to have hierarchical or inheritance level structures that will mirror pretty closely our Active Directory. Okay, so notice that we have administrative staff, we have drivers, we have fabricators, we have information technology, those types of things. So if we create a hierarchical structure in our roles, then we can create resource entitlements at a particular level, such as admin staff or drivers or fabricators, etc. And if we create that resource entitlement at the admin staff in any location, then what we can do is we can simply have that definition targeting the administrative staff OU. All right, so it doesn't matter how detailed I get underneath my admin staff. I can create as many job functions and roles as I need under my admin staff, but my assignment for the resource entitlements for Active Directory can pretty closely tie back into the Active Directory if I do it at this particular administrative staff level in my role structure. So that's where I've gotten my basic role structure from, my higher level parent roles. So for admin staff, we can then break admin staff down into some of the roles that they will have. Our drivers, same type of thing, and all the way down to our warehouse roles. So now the warehouse roles will have certain access based on the fact that, for instance, I am a receiving clerk in a particular warehouse. So that's why we've gone ahead and broken down our warehouses and specified the various warehouses individually, is so that I can actually have a common role called receiving clerk in Pendleton, a receiving clerk in the Scranton Distribution Center, a receiving clerk in Tulsa, and I don't have to duplicate my roles. I can simply have a single role. And then I've got picker, packer, etc., etc. And these, of course, would become a lot more extensive in a real company, because you've got a lot more warehousing roles than are depicted here. But this gives you the idea of how we could start breaking that down so that we could begin doing assignments at that level. And then on the retail side, we can have our different retail roles associated with our different stores. All right, so one other thing that we need to take a look at, another assignment that I made that I talked about previously in this video, is the whole concept of projects. All right, so even though it's not a department, it's not a organizational component of the company, the fact that these folks do long-running projects and need to be able to manage people in and out of projects gives us an opportunity to go ahead and create a location tree, subtree structure here for projects. All right. Now, the reason we're doing it this way is because, remember when we talked about the fact that they are highly structured as a project management organization for projects? It means that their project managers have wide and broad authority over a lot of things in their projects. So if, for instance, a project manager needs to set up a management role that he wants to use to grant access to certain things within SharePoint, then we could give him the authority to create management roles in this particular location. So we can delegate him the authority to do anything he wants within this location. So he can create groups and put them in this location and then manage memberships in and out of those groups. He could create application assignments for any applications that we would assign to this particular location. He could do SharePoint site management for SharePoint sites that we would put within that particular location. And then all we would need to do is create a assignment for managing all of the objects within that particular location. So at an assignment level, I can give someone the business role of project manager in a particular project. And then once I've assigned them as a project manager to a particular project, then I can direct my assignments and my authority and delegation to say that if I'm a project manager in this project, I get management capability for all of the objects within that project location. So that's how we can set up kind of a process type location structure within our organizational location structure for the specific purposes of being able to assign people to projects and give project managers the authority to manage all the objects in those projects. So that's our role and location structure. Let's go ahead and we'll just open all these up so you can see the extent we have for our locations and then the extent we have for our roles. So you can see we've got quite a few more roles than our location structures. All right. So in summary, once again, there's no substitute for good requirements gathering and really getting to know the business needs of the organization. So when it comes to designing an effective role and location structure, that's critical. Build out the role and location structure to the needs of the business, not just the needs of the technical systems. Look for areas to aggregate and inherit where it makes sense. And in our particular scenario here, we created those higher level role parent nodes so that we could easily map in our resource entitlements, but we kept the location structure relatively simple on the location side. Remember, not every assignment can or maybe should be tied to a business role and location structure. So build out your roles and locations where they make sense. Then wrap other processes around the assignment of the assignments that don't easily fit into the business role and location structure. And finally, remember every company is different. There's no hard and fast, right and wrong way to design your infrastructure. It's just simple and complex. We're very configurable and we can be used to manage just about any infrastructure that you can think of. So the trick is to figure out the most efficient configuration to give you the most effective management of your resources. So hey, thanks for watching our EmpowerID 101 video for our role and location scenario for a manufacturer. I'll come back later and catch some other videos we'll have with other scenarios and other topics.